At Christmas dinner, my father set his wine glass down and asked, "So, you're still living in the house I paid for?" I looked straight at him and said, "I don't live in any place you bought, Dad." He turned to my mother and stepfather. Neither of them said a word. Their faces went white. If you found out your family was lying to your face for months, would you call them out in front of everyone? Or would you just walk away and never look back? I'm Julia. I'm 34, and for most of my life, I was known as the only daughter of Charles Langston. My father likes to make things happen on his terms: companies, parties, or people. My mother, Elaine, has always been the one who hosts, apologizes, smooths everything over when he's too sharp. I live about 40 minutes away, in a one-bedroom near Mountain View. Now it's Christmas again. Every year, my parents insist on a full house. The place is modern glass walls, steel beams, cold even with the fireplaces on. My brother David is here, with his wife, Marissa. There are a few family friends, some old business partners of my dad's, people who know how to act around money. I'm here because my mother called twice and said she missed me. I drove over late, brought a bottle of wine, tried not to notice every little thing that hadn't changed. There's a sense of expectation in this house. You don't show up in jeans. You don't talk about money, even though it's the only thing that matters. I always used to think I was part of this world, but the last few years have made it clear I'm not. My parents have never seen my apartment. They never ask about my job. If someone brings it up, they change the subject or say, "Julia likes to keep busy." I used to invite them for dinner, but after a while I stopped. They never said no. They just never said anything. Now, sitting in the living room, watching my father pour drinks and laugh too loud, I can see what I missed before. My parents only see me here, on their territory. Anywhere else, I'm an inconvenience. Maybe I always was. My father set his fork down, folded his napkin, and looked straight at me. "Why don't you move back into the condo?" he said. I kept my eyes on my plate. "I don't live in any place you bought, Dad." The words came out flat, almost like I was reading them off a card. Someone's water glass scraped against the table. My mother blinked, jaw tight, and my stepfather's hand hovered in the air, holding a roll he never brought to his mouth. My brother coughed once, quietly, and went back to studying the glazed ham like it might tell him what to do. The room didn't feel warm anymore. I could hear the fridge humming in the kitchen. My father's lips pressed together. He turned, slow, to face my mother and stepfather. There was nothing in his eyes, except a kind of tired blankness. My mother's hand trembled as she reached for the salt. My stepfather stared at his plate, knuckles white around his fork. For a few breaths, nobody spoke. I could see the pattern of the tablecloth, the little blue flowers, and thought about how many family dinners had started with fake laughter in this dining room. The clock on the wall ticked, too loud. My father cleared his throat. "When did you move out?" he asked. I kept my hands under the table. 4 months ago, I said. My brother's chair creaked. He glanced at me, then at my mother, then at the untouched mashed potatoes. My stepfather looked up, voice too steady. "I told you she wanted more independence, Greg." The condo was too far from her office. My mother nodded, eyes fixed on the centerpiece. "We thought it was best not to bother you with it," she said. "You were in Europe. You didn't need the stress." My father's jaw moved as if he wanted to say something else, but he just shook his head once. His voice was low. "I would have wanted to know. I paid for that place." My mother's voice cracked on the edge. "You said you wanted her to have it," she said. "You told me when you signed the papers." My father looked down at his empty plate. "I wanted her to have it," he said to the table. I felt the heat climbing up my throat, but I kept my face neutral. My stepfather tried to push the conversation forward. "Let's eat before everything gets cold," he said, and started cutting his meat, but his hand shook. My brother finally took a bite, chewing slow, eyes on me. I waited for someone to say more, but nobody did. There was a faint sound outside, neighbor kids yelling in the street. I watched my mother set her fork down, her wedding ring catching in the light. She looked older than I remembered. My father poured himself more water, hands steady, movements careful. I could feel my own pulse in my neck. We ate in silence for a while, the only sound the scrape of knives and the faint clatter of dishes. My father didn't look at me again. My mother kept glancing at my stepfather, like she was waiting for a signal. My brother finished his ham, then excused himself to the bathroom. The chair legs dragged on the tile. I took a sip of wine, tasting nothing. The condo key sat heavy in my purse, a piece of metal nobody else at the table could see. The meal went on, quiet and slow, like we were all waiting for someone else to break the next piece of news. I kept my face still and ate my potatoes, one forkful at a time. My father's fork clinked against his plate. He didn't look at me. He stared straight at Elaine, his voice flat, but louder than I'd heard in years. "Elaine, did you buy Julia's apartment with my account?" Elaine didn't answer right away. She shifted in her chair, set her knife down. I watched her hands. She pressed one palm flat on the table, the other curled in her lap. She glanced at me, then at him. Her mouth opened, closed. I could hear the clock in the hallway ticking. "We only wanted to help," she said. She kept her eyes on the placemat, voice smaller than usual. She was struggling. "You know how hard it was for her after," she trailed off. I felt my jaw lock. My fingers curled under the edge of the table. I looked at my father, his shoulders stiff, his lips pressed together. It wasn't the first time Elaine had gone soft, but it was the first time I'd heard her sound unsure. Harold cleared his throat. He was always careful at these dinners, always trying to keep things smooth. "It was after her job ended," he said. "She needed somewhere stable." He kept his gaze on my father, not on me. I knew the story they wanted to tell broken daughter, generous parents, a hand up in hard times. My father shook his head once. "That's not your money, Elaine." His voice was low now, steady. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Elaine's cheeks turned red. She looked at me again, quick, almost apologetic. "We thought we'd pay it back," she said. "It was only supposed to be a loan." She tried to smile, but it didn't fit. I stared at the water glass in front of me, counted the bubbles on the side. I didn't want to look at any of them. My throat felt tight. Harold tried again. "Julia was in a bad spot, Robert. You know she couldn't stay at her old place." He looked at me, waiting for me to nod along. My father didn't raise his voice. But the edge was there. "You should have asked. That's all I'm saying. You should have come to me." Elaine nodded, but her hands kept moving, touching her necklace, then the napkin, then the fork again. I wanted to say something, but I didn't trust my voice. The silence stretched. I could feel the shame in the air, mine, Elaine's, maybe even Harold's, though he tried to hide it with a neutral face. "I'm sorry," Elaine said finally. "We'll work it out." She looked at me, like she wanted a lifeline. I kept my eyes on the table. My father pushed back from his chair a little, not enough to stand, just enough to signal the conversation was over. His plate was still half full. I listened to the scrape of his knife as he cut a piece of chicken, chewed it slowly. Elaine didn't pick up her fork again. Harold sipped his wine. I felt like a guest in my own life. Nobody said anything for a long time. The window was open outside. I could hear a car passing, then nothing but the clock again. The rest of dinner passed in fragments. My father asked about work. Elaine tried to sound normal. Harold told a story about a neighbor's dog. I answered in short sentences. The food tasted like nothing. When I cleared my plate, Elaine caught my arm. Her grip was gentle, but I could feel the tremor in her fingers. "Julia," she whispered. "We'll fix this." I nodded, but I didn't say thank you. I went to the kitchen, ran cold water over my hands. I listened for voices behind me, but the dining room was silent. I knew things had shifted. The way my father looked at Elaine. The way she looked at me. Even Harold, careful as always, seemed smaller at the table. I dried my hands on a towel, then went upstairs, leaving the plates for someone else. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the house to settle. I could still hear my father's voice, flat and sharp, echoing through the walls. My brother waited until we'd cleared the dishes. He said he needed help with something, voice flat. I followed him down the hall, past the coat closet, into that little nook by the window where the light always looks yellow. He kept glancing down, not meeting my eyes, and I could hear the TV still murmuring in the next room. He handed me a folder. The edges were soft, like it had been handled a lot. He didn't say anything, just nodded at my hands. I opened it. There were a few sheets, thin and covered in signatures, seals, legal words. At first, it didn't register what I was looking at, just lines and numbers. Then I saw the header, transfer of property deed. My apartment's address. My name. But the buyer, my mother, and a note about a wire transfer from my father's old trust. The date was from last spring. I kept flipping through, slower. There was a page with a signature line. My own name, written in my handwriting but off somehow too neat, too careful. I held it up. My brother watched me. He didn't move. "What is this?" I said, but quietly. He looked down at his shoes. "You should see it before you say anything," he said. "Just look." On the next page, there was a copy of a check, the amount the same as what I'd been told my mother loaned me for the down payment. But it came from the trust, not her account. There was a second page, an email printout, only a few lines, my mother's address at the top. Instructions to the lawyer. Please prepare the deed in her name, as discussed. I stared at the date. It was 2 weeks before I signed what I thought were my own mortgage papers. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt tight. No one had asked me to sign a deed. All the meetings I remembered were about the bank, the mortgage, the paperwork. Not this. I looked at the signature again. It was close, but the slant was wrong. I hadn't written it. I felt my hands shaking, so I put the folder down on the shelf. My brother kept watching me. I had to ask, "Why do you have this?" He shrugged, but his face looked hard. Dad kept old files in the basement. I was helping clear some stuff out. "I found this last week." "And you didn't say anything." My voice sounded higher than I wanted. He shook his head. "I wanted to make sure before I brought it up. I thought maybe it was just paperwork. But your signature." He tapped the page, not touching it. "That's not how you sign." I stared at the page, trying to remember what my signature looked like on those bank forms. I turned the paper sideways, looking for any sign it was a copy, some explainable mistake. I didn't remember signing anything like this. I heard my mother laugh in the kitchen sharp, then gone. My brother didn't say anything else. We stood there in the hall, the folder open between us, listening to the house creak. I picked up the folder and closed it, careful not to crumple the papers. My brother stepped back, giving me space. "I'll take these," I said. He just nodded, not meeting my eyes. I walked back to my room, folder clutched against my chest. Each step felt strange, like the floor was softer than it should be. I could still hear the TV, the low voices of my parents in the kitchen, the scrape of a chair. Everything sounded normal. I shut my door and sat on the bed, folder in my lap. I let myself stare at the signature, tracing the lines with my finger. I didn't feel angry, not yet. Just empty. Like something had shifted, and I hadn't noticed until now. The apartment wasn't mine. The story I'd been told about sacrifice, about help wasn't true. And my own name on a line, written by someone else. I put the folder in my drawer and sat there, listening to the house, waiting for the noise to fade. I left the party without saying much. Just a quick wave at the group near the hallway, nobody really noticing I was gone. I walked to my car fast, keeping my head down. My hands shook as I pressed the unlock button. Once I was inside, I sat for a minute with the engine off. I called my mother. It rang until voicemail picked up. I didn't leave a message. I just stared ahead at the parking lot lights, then started the car and drove home. The drive was silent. I kept the radio off. I watched the road and tried to keep my breathing steady. I wanted to scream. I gripped the steering wheel tighter when I thought about my mother's face at the party, the way she smiled and talked to everyone like nothing was wrong. The streetlights blurred on the windshield. When I stopped at a red light, I called her again. Same thing, straight to voicemail. I put the phone down and drove the rest of the way without checking it again. At my apartment, I parked in my usual spot. I saw the neighbor's dog in the window, barking at nothing. I climbed the stairs with my shoes in my hand. The hallway was empty. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. The air still smelled like the candles I'd lit that morning. I tossed my bag on the chair. I didn't bother changing clothes. I turned on my laptop and waited for it to wake up. The screen glowed in the dark. I opened my email and searched for the lease agreement. I typed lease in the search bar and waited. The only thing that came up was a PDF from my mother, sent in May 3 months after I moved in. The subject line said, "For your records." I opened the attachment. It was the lease with my name on it, but the date was wrong. I remembered signing a paper copy at her kitchen table when I first moved in. She'd printed it out, handed me a pen, and said, "Just the usual stuff." I'd signed it without reading every line. She took the paper, folded it, and said she'd scan it later. Now, searching my files, I couldn't find any scan from before May. I looked in my downloads, in my documents folder, and then in my old texts to her. Nothing. No original agreement. Just that one PDF, forwarded months after the fact. I tried to remember if she'd ever given me a hard copy. I got up and checked my kitchen drawer where I keep important paper stacks forms, pay stubs, receipts. No lease. I sat back down at the laptop. The only proof I had was that one file she'd sent me, and it wasn't the right one. I scrolled through our old emails, looking for something else. There were messages about furniture, a reminder about garbage day, a forwarded recipe. No lease. I opened the PDF again and read through it line by line. Some of the terms looked unfamiliar. The rent amount was right, but there was a new clause about early occupancy and a note about shared maintenance fees that I didn't remember agreeing to. At the bottom, both our signatures were there, but the date was May 12. I'd moved in February. I sat back and stared at the screen. My heart pounded. I pictured my mother, how she always handled the paperwork, always told me not to worry about the details. I thought about the party, how she acted like nothing was wrong, how she avoided my eyes when I tried to talk to her. For a minute, I just sat there, staring at the lease. I felt something in my chest, anger, maybe, or something colder. I closed the laptop, stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was empty. I stood there in the dark until my legs hurt. I parked on the street, engine off, hands still on the wheel for a minute. Their house looked the same as always, sun hitting the faded siding, a few weeds poking through the steps. I rang the bell. My stepfather opened the door. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't say good morning or ask why I was there. He just stepped back to let me in. My mother was on the couch, tissue balled in her fist, staring at the floor. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. Her hands wouldn't stop moving. I closed the door behind me and set my bag down. I didn't sit. Why did you forge my signature? My voice sounded flat, even to me. She blinked fast, mouth twitching. She turned her tissue over and over in her lap. We thought you'd refuse if you knew, she said. We just wanted you to have a good place to live. You needed stability. My stepfather leaned against the wall, arms folded. He never wanted you to leave, he said, quieter. You know that. He wouldn't have signed off on anything. I stayed where I was. My mother started crying, quietly, hunched over. I could see the spot on the coffee table where they used to keep my school pictures. It was empty now. You did it to keep me here, I said. Not for me. For you. She shook her head, still not looking at me. No, it wasn't like that. We wanted to help. You always rush into things. I didn't want you to make a mistake. You're so young. I took my phone from my coat pocket and slid it into my jeans, thumb pressing record. I left it peeking out, half covered by my shirt. I looked straight at her. Tell me everything. I want the full story. My mother's voice got thinner. She glanced at my stepfather, but he didn't move. She started talking. We just thought it would be easier if you didn't have to deal with paperwork, she said. The apartment was in your name, but we took care of the lease. We changed your mailing address to here, so nothing would get lost. I stared at her. You redirected my mail. She nodded. It was only for a little while. We wanted to make sure nothing important slipped through. Your student loans, college stuff. She trailed off. What about the loans? My stepfather cleared his throat. We paid them, he said. It was a lump sum last year. You were stressing yourself out. We figured if we handled it, you could just focus on your job. Without telling me. He shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Your mother thought it was best. I stood there, trying to take it in. My mother dabbed her eyes and said, It's done now. We were just trying to help, but maybe we went about it wrong. I took a breath. I want to see all the paperwork, I said. The mail, the loan documents, everything with my name on it. My mother nodded. She stood up and walked down the hall. My stepfather watched her go, then looked at me. He looked tired, older than I remembered. You know your dad would never have let you move out this soon, he said. He thought you'd get hurt out there. I kept my face still. He's not here, I said. I'm the one who lives with the consequences. My mother came back with a folder, thick with papers. She put it on the table and stepped back. I picked it up, flipping through pages. My name was everywhere signed, initialed, forwarded, paid. I put the folder in my bag. I'll look at this at home. Neither of them tried to stop me. My stepfather stared at the wall behind my head. My mother wiped her cheeks. I left without another word. The door clicked shut behind me. My phone was still recording in my pocket. I left my mother's house with my bag over my shoulder and drove straight to the branch on Lincoln. The parking lot was almost empty, which felt strange for a Monday afternoon. I waited in the car for a minute, watching the glass doors, then went in. The air smelled like printer toner and lemon cleaner. The manager, Mrs. Patel, remembered me from when I came with my father years ago. She smiled and asked how he was doing. I said he was fine and that I needed to see the trust account records, specifically any large withdrawals in the last 2 years. She led me into her office and asked for my ID. I handed it over and tried not to fidget. She typed my father's name, then mine, then hesitated. She asked if I wanted just the statements or the details of each transaction. I told her I needed every wire, every check, every outgoing payment. She glanced at me, then printed the statement history. Each page slid out of the printer slow and warm. I could hear her clicking through digital files, reading each line. The recipients were listed as M. Sutherland, and an address I recognized as my parents' house. Next to each transfer, there was a notation: home repairs, property tax, landscaping. I asked her to print the actual wire confirmations and any receipts attached. She said that would take a minute. She left me alone in her office, door half open. I stared at the glass paperweight on her desk and tapped my thumb against my knee. When she came back, she handed me a folder with 20 or 30 sheets copies of wire authorizations, emails with digital signatures, scans of handwritten receipts. All in my mother's name. All with my father's initials on the bottom, but the handwriting on some looked off, more careful than his usual scrawl. Mrs. Patel asked if there was anything else. I shook my head. Before I left, she reminded me the bank couldn't give legal advice. I thanked her and walked out with the folder pressed to my chest. The parking lot was even emptier than before. I sat in my car with the engine off, reading through the first few pages. The receipts were for things like interior remodel, roofing, and furniture. I'd never seen new furniture in their house. I drove home with the folder on the seat next to me. The city looked flat through the windshield. I parked in my usual spot, went inside, and set everything out on the dining table. I opened my laptop and started organizing the documents by date. I made a spreadsheet listing every withdrawal, every recipient, every supposed expense. I matched wire numbers to receipts. Some lined up. It was almost 5 when I started drafting the email. I kept it factual. Dad, I went to the bank today and requested recent trust account records. Please see attached. I've listed the transactions that concern me below. I attached the wire transfer printouts and the receipts. I added a timeline of expenses with links to the scanned documents. My hands shook a little as I typed out the subject line. Trust account discrepancies, please review. I stopped and reread everything. The facts were plain. The transactions were real. My mother's name was on every pay. I saved the draft and closed the laptop. Outside, the sun was low, lighting up the top of the fence. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I listened for a while, folder still open on the table, and waited for my breath to slow down. My phone rang just as I was putting dishes away. I saw my father's name. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring twice, then hit speaker and set the phone on the table. I felt the edge of the chair press against my knees as I leaned forward. He started with my name. Julia. His voice sounded thin, less steady than usual. He said he was calling from his office, that he almost didn't call at all. He said, I didn't authorize any of this. Your mother and Harold managed their own accounts. I stayed out of it. You know how she is. I didn't say anything. The line was quiet except for his breathing and a faint hum, maybe his desk fan. He went on. He said, your brother called me. He said you were angry, that you found a signature. I haven't seen any paperwork, I swear. If your name, S on anything, that's not me. I told him I have copies. I have the documents. I could hear him shift in his chair. He cleared his throat. He said, I believe you. I don't know why she would do that. She's always done things her way. I stood up and started pacing, my socks sliding on the floor. He was quiet for a long time. Then softer, he said, there's more. I need you to hear this from me. You should know. Your mother used your name to secure a second property. I didn't know about it until last month. She kept it from me. It's not in any family trust. It's just there, in your name. I stopped walking. My hand was shaking, so I pressed it against the wall. I asked, where is it? He said, it's in Bridgeview. An apartment. I only found out because Harold bragged about it at dinner. I thought he was joking. Then I saw a tax notice with your name. I confronted her. She said it was a good investment for you. She said you'd be grateful someday. I sat down again. I could hear my pulse in my ear, but my voice was steady. So she forged my name. Twice. He let out a breath. I think so, he said. I never saw anything. She keeps her own files. She and Harold are very close. I never understood it. There was a scraping sound, maybe his chair. He said, she's not a bad person, Julia. She wants things her way. She's always been like this. I looked at the phone. I felt tired, but not surprised. I told him, I want copies of everything. I want you to send me anything you find. He said, I will. I'm sorry, Julia. For not knowing. For not stopping it. I didn't say anything. My father rarely apologized. I heard him sigh. He said, I'll talk to her again. I don't know if it'll help. I'll handle it. He said, okay. The silence sat between us for a minute. Then he said, I hope you can forgive her. She's your mother. I said, I need to think. He said, I love you, Julia. I said, I know. He hung up first. I sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the quiet. The apartment felt cold. I realized my mother's betrayal was bigger than I thought. She hadn't just signed my name once. She de-used me as a shield, or maybe as a pawn. My father sounded tired because he knew it too. He hadn't stopped any of it. Maybe he didn't want to see. I got up and opened a window. The air outside was sharp. I let it in. I worked late most nights that week. My manager didn't ask questions when I started staying past 7. I told her I had a family thing and needed to use the scanner. She left a mug of tea on my desk and turned the lights out on her way home. I waited until the office was quiet, then I started printing. My hands shook the first time I opened my mother's email account on the work computer. I thought someone would come up behind me and ask what I was doing. Nobody did. I downloaded every message with my name in the subject line. I found the loan confirmations she'd forwarded to herself, then deleted from her sent folder. I opened the metadata and saw her name as the author. I took screenshots, saved the originals, and emailed copies to myself. The folders on my desktop kept multiplying. One for the mortgage broker, one for the fake signatures, one for every time she'd written for my daughter in the subject. There was an Excel sheet I updated every night. I listed every date, every dollar, every reply. It took 3 hours to untangle which payments had come from my account and which from hers. I color-coded everything. I made a separate tab for the insurance company letters, her handwriting, my address. I called the lawyer on Wednesday. Her assistant didn't ask why I needed a real estate fraud consult. She offered me 2 appointment slots. I picked the earliest one. The office was in a glass building near the station. I wore my work clothes and didn't look at anyone on the train. The lawyer's office was cold and smelled like printer ink. She shook my hand and told me to sit. I handed her a folder with the emails and the spreadsheet. She didn't say anything for a long time. She read one message twice, then looked up at me. You did all this by yourself, she said. I nodded. I didn't know what else to do. She asked how long it had been going on. I told her about the first loan, the forged signature, the calls from the bank that I thought were for my mother. She asked if I'd talk to my family. I shook my head. If you want to pursue this, she said, you'll need to be prepared for it to get ugly. I said I understood. She didn't look convinced. We went over every document. She asked if I had the original loan paperwork. I said I did. She showed me where to look for the signature discrepancies. She said the emails with altered metadata were important. She printed one and circled the author field. We can start with a letter, she said. Ask for restitution, threaten civil charges. If they don't respond, we move forward with a fraud complaint. You'll need to keep everything confidential until then. I said I wouldn't tell anyone. She asked if I was safe at home. I said yes. She gave me a business card and told me to call if anything changed. I paid the retainer with my credit card and left the office with the folder under my arm. On the train home, I kept the folder pressed to my chest. That night, I made copies of everything and hid them in my work bag. I texted my mother that I had to work late the next day. She sent a thumbs-up emoji. I put my phone face down and didn't reply. When I got home, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. I could hear the TV in my parents' room. I opened my laptop and made one more backup of the spreadsheet, just in case. I packed the folder in my bag and put it by the door. My mother asked if I wanted dinner. I said I'd eaten at work. She didn't push. I went to bed with the light on. I didn't sleep much. The lawyer's office was smaller than I expected, crowded with files and two mismatched chairs. I sat on the one by the window, a folder balanced on my knees. She greeted me with a short nod and gestured for the folder. I handed it to her without a word. She flipped through the copies bank statements with transfers I hadn't authorized, property documents with signatures that should have been mine, not my mother's. She stopped at the letter with the forged signature and looked up. I watched her scan it, her lips pressed tight. She didn't ask questions at first. She just kept reading, making neat stacks on her desk as she went. I watched her hands. They were steady. The clock ticked, and I counted the seconds in my head until she finally spoke. You kept all your originals. I nodded. Scans and the physical ones. Everything's here. She slid one paper across the desk, tapping the highlighted line. This transfer, you never authorized it. No. That was supposed to be a joint savings, account for emergencies. My mother moved the money 2 months ago. She nodded again, her pen tapping the desk in a slow rhythm. Did you confront her? I said I did. She asked what my mother said. She denied it. Claimed the money was always hers. The lawyer sat back. You have a strong case for fraud and forgery, she said. She used your name to access your funds and property. She could face criminal charges. I stared at the papers, trying to imagine what that would look like. My mother in a courtroom. Our family sitting on opposite sides. My father pretending not to see me. The lawyer's voice broke in again. You want to press charges? I shook my head. Not yet. I want them to understand I'm not backing down. I want the property in my name, and the money returned. She nodded, almost like she expected this. Negotiation is cleaner. It's faster. But you have to be ready if they refuse. I'm ready. That was all I could say. She started drafting a letter right then, typing fast, her nails clicking on the keys. She read it back to me line by line. She listed the account numbers, the date of the property transfer, the forged signature. She referenced the legal statutes for forgery and fraud. She wrote, unless the property at this address is transferred to my client's sole name and restitution for unauthorized financial activity is paid in full within 14 days. We will initiate legal proceedings. She printed it, slid it across for my signature. I signed. She made copies. She asked if I wanted it sent by email or registered post. Registered post, I said. I want proof they got it. She nodded, gathering the pages into an envelope. I watched her seal it, pressing the glue flat with her palm. My hands felt cold, but steady. She looked up as she put the envelope aside. This will get their attention. Most cases settle at this point. But if they fight, we go to court. I nodded again. She started talking about next steps, what to do if they call, what to do if they ignore it. I listened, but all I could think about was the look on my mother's face when she opened the letter. I wondered if she'd call me first or my father. I wondered if my father would finally admit what he'd done, or if he'd hide behind her again. I didn't know. I just wanted them to know I wasn't the quiet daughter anymore. The lawyer stood, signaling the meeting was over. She shook my hand. Her grip was firm. I left the office with a receipt and a list of next steps. The envelope stayed behind, sitting on her desk, ready to be mailed in the morning. Walking to my car, I felt the air shift. It wasn't relief or victory. Just a little less weight pressing down on my chest. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and waited for the feeling to settle. Then I drove home, the letter already moving toward them, the next move theirs. My phone buzzed at 7:13 p.m. I let it ring twice before answering. My mother's voice was wet, thick, the kind she only used when she thought she might lose something. Julia, please, you can't do this. You're my daughter. We only wanted to help you. You don't understand how hard it was. I waited until she ran out of air. I spoke low, steady. You forged my name. You lied to me for years. This isn't help. This is theft. She started to sob harder, something between a gasp and a whine. I heard movement, then Harold's voice muffled at first, then clear. Julia, let's not get lawyers involved. Think about your mother's health. She did this for you, for your future. You'll see that when you calm down. I said nothing. He kept talking, his voice rising, the same tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable but was losing control. When he finally paused, I said, I'm not discussing it with you. There was a long silence. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment. I could hear my own breathing, even in sharp. 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated again. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I picked up after the first ring. He didn't say hello. Julia, your mother called me. She's hysterical. I want you to know I'm done. I'm cutting off every payment, every allowance. She and Harold get nothing from me until this is fixed. You want a lawyer, you get one. I'll pay for it. He waited. I said okay. He added, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have asked more questions. Then he hung up. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands didn't shake. I watched the glass fog up. Outside, it was getting dark. My phone buzzed again. A text from my brother. Are you okay? I didn't know about the second property. I swear. Are you at your apartment? Do you want me to come by? I typed, I'm fine. Don't come. I need some quiet. He wrote back, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I didn't answer. I put my phone face down on the counter. I leaned against the sink, looking at the window at nothing. The house was silent, except for the hum of the fridge. Every few minutes, my phone would light up group texts, calls, a voicemail from my aunt asking if it was true, if I was really suing my own mother. I didn't listen to it. I let them pile up. I kept thinking about Harold's voice, the way he tried to sound calm, the way my mother cried before she realized it wouldn't work. I thought about my father, how quickly he cut them off, how little it took for the whole thing to unravel. I stood there until the water in the glass went warm. Then I went to the bedroom and closed the door, phone still on the counter. The house stayed quiet. I lay on the bed and listened to my own breath, slow and even, until I stopped noticing the time. A week passed. I didn't hear from my mother or Harold. My phone stayed quiet except for one call from my lawyer. He asked if I could meet in his office the next day. I left work early and sat in the waiting area, looking at the framed diploma with his name in gold. He came out with a few papers and slid them across the table. The deed transfer was there, stamped and notarized. My apartment was in my name now, not my mother's, not Harold's. The paper felt heavy even, though it was just a few sheets. He handed me a second envelope, cream-colored, my mother's handwriting on the front. I opened it while he watched me. Inside, she had written, "We never meant to hurt you. We thought you would understand. Families do things for each other. I hope one day you can forgive us." There was no apology, not really. Just a soft request, like she thought this was a misunderstanding, or that her intentions mattered more than what she'd done. I put the letter back in the envelope. My lawyer cleared his throat. He had a different stack of papers in his hand. He didn't look up for a second. He said he'd done a routine property check that morning, just to be thorough, and something new had come up. There was a lien on the second property, my mother and Harold's house. Filed that morning, by my father. He laid out the timeline. My father, who hadn't spoken much through the whole thing, had gone to the courthouse that morning. He showed the records. My father had filed the paperwork the same day the deed to my apartment transferred to me. The lien was large, enough to make it impossible for my mother and Harold to keep the house unless they paid it off immediately. My father had also filed for divorce. I sat there and listened. I didn't ask questions. My lawyer explained that with the lien, the house would have to be sold. The proceeds would go to my father first. There wouldn't be much left for my mother and Harold. I asked how long this would take. He said not long, maybe a month, maybe less, depending on how quickly they moved. He asked if I wanted to see the paperwork. I shook my head. When I left, I walked through the lobby and tried to remember what the house looked like on Christmas mornings when I was a kid. The blue shutters. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls. My mother's voice humming in the kitchen. Harold hadn't been there then. My phone buzzed as I walked outside. It was a group text from my mother, sent to me and my father. She wrote, "We need to talk. Please, can we meet?" I didn't answer. My father didn't either. The message sat there, blue and unread. That night, I watched the news on mute in my apartment. The city outside felt different. I looked at the deed on my table, the envelope with my mother's handwriting beside it. I tried to picture my mother and Harold packing boxes, trying to decide what to take and what to leave. I knew my father would be quiet about it, just as he had been his whole life. He'd waited, watched, and then chosen his moment. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel angry. I just felt like something had closed. My mother and Harold would have to leave the house. My father would be gone too. All the years of pretending things were fine were over. The house wouldn't belong to anyone in our family anymore. The next morning, I woke up and made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, looking out at the street. I didn't check my phone. I didn't call anyone. I thought about the line in my mother's letter, families do things for each other. I wondered if she still believed that. The silence in my apartment was complete. I didn't pack much when I left, just clothes, a couple of books, my laptop. Most of the rest I didn't want. I carried 2 suitcases down the elevator and called a car. The driver asked if I was moving out for good. I said yes. The new building had a different kind of silence. The halls didn't echo in the same way, and no one nodded in the lobby. I changed the locks the next morning. The super came up with a new set of keys and watched while I signed the paperwork. He asked if I needed help moving furniture, but I said I'd handle it. I spent the afternoon changing my mailing address. Utilities, bank, insurance, pharmacy. Small, practical tasks. I blocked my mother's number. I blocked Harold's too. They tried to reach out at first 3 missed calls on the old phone, then nothing. I left their messages unread. A week after I moved, an email arrived from my father's lawyer. The subject line was just my last name, nothing else. He wanted to schedule a call. I wrote back, kept it brief. We set a time. The call lasted 15 minutes. The lawyer explained the details of the trust, separate from my mother, untouchable by her or Harold. He asked if I wanted to speak with my father directly. I said no. He said he understood. I signed the documents online and sent them back. After that, the lawyer sent a confirmation, 1 paragraph, no extra words. At night, the new apartment was quiet in a different way. I could hear my neighbor's television through the wall, a low hum, nothing distinct. I bought a new set of dishes, plain white. I kept them stacked on the counter. I set up my laptop on the small kitchen table. Some nights I worked late, letting emails pile up just so I could delete them in the morning. The humiliation from the last few months faded. It didn't sting in the same way. Mostly, it was a cold, dull memory, tucked away. Sometimes I thought about calling my mother, just to hear what she'd say. I went through my contacts and deleted her number, even though I had it memorized. I deleted Harold's too. I kept my father's number, but never used it. I wondered if he noticed. The first Saturday in the new place, I walked to the grocery store 2 blocks away. The cashier smiled, asked if I wanted a bag. I paid cash. I bought things I knew I'd eat: eggs, bread, yogurt, apples. I walked home in the sun. The street was lined with trees. Some of the leaves were turning yellow. I carried the bag against my chest, felt the sharp edge of the carton through the paper. In the old apartment, there were always reminders: her perfume in the hallway, Harold's shoes by the door, the sound of them talking in the kitchen. In the new place, there was no one else. I left the windows open. The wind moved the curtains. I watched the dust settle on the floor. My father's lawyer sent 1 final email to confirm everything was in place. I replied with a thank you. That was it. There were still moments when I remembered the look on my mother's face, the way Harold avoided my eyes. Sometimes I'd think about the last argument, the way my voice sounded in the room. But the feeling didn't last. Most days I woke up and went through the routine. Shower, coffee, check the mailbox, delete messages. The silence didn't bother me. I didn't tell anyone about the trust. I didn't tell anyone about the money. If people asked about my family, I said we didn't keep in touch. It was easier that way. I kept my answers short. I kept my distance. By the end of the month, the new apartment felt almost familiar. I hung a calendar on the wall, filled in the days. I threw out the boxes from moving and took down the old address on my phone. I blocked the last number that tried to reach me. The cold distance stayed, but it was better than before. I could move through my own space without watching or waiting. It felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. We signed the last documents on a Thursday morning. I sat across from my parents and Harold at the lawyer's office. No one made eye contact. The attorney explained the terms. I nodded and signed. My name was the only one on the deed now. There was nothing left to discuss. My mother and Harold packed their things the following weekend. I watched through the front window as they loaded boxes into Harold's truck. She didn't come to the door. I didn't go out. When they pulled away, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the quiet. The house felt bigger. I cleaned out their room that night, took down the photos she'd hung on the hallway wall. I didn't throw them out, just put them in a box in the attic. I didn't want to see her face every morning. My father's lawyer called me on a Monday to confirm I'd sent over the last set of statements. My father moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. He called once, said thanks for handling things, then hung up. He didn't ask if I wanted to meet up. I didn't offer. I kept my answers short when anyone reached out. No details, no stories, just facts. I changed my locks and set up a new password for my email. I didn't tell anyone when I'd be home or away. There were no more family dinners, no surprise visits, no late-night calls. I chose what I did with my weekends. I bought new towels, new curtains, moved the furniture around. I made coffee in the mornings and ate in silence. I didn't owe anyone explanations. My life was my own, for the first time in years. 6 months passed. I ran into my mother at the grocery store by the frozen foods. She held a bag of peas, checked the label, and looked up. We made eye contact for a second. I nodded. She nodded back. No words. She moved on, and I went to get eggs. I watched her at the register from a distance. She didn't look back. My brother stops by sometimes. He calls first. He brings coffee or something from the bakery his wife likes. We talk about work. He asks about the apartment, says it looks good. He stays an hour, maybe 2, then checks the time and leaves. He doesn't ask about Mom. I don't ask about her either. He tries to fill the silence with stories about his kid or the neighbors. He's careful with his words, in a way he never was before. The apartment is quiet most nights. I come home, kick off my shoes, and leave my bag by the door. I don't have to listen for footsteps or voices in the hall. No one touches my things. The fridge stays organized. If I leave a mug in the sink, it's still there in the morning. I cook what I want. I sleep with the door open or closed. It doesn't matter. Sometimes, I wake up and remember how tense it used to feel. I don't miss it. The locks are new. I change them myself. I keep the keys in a small dish by the door. I don't think about who has the old ones. On Sundays, I walk to the park with a coffee. I watch the dogs run. It's quiet. No one expects anything from me anymore. I go home when I want, and the silence feels like something I earned. I never thought a secret like that could sit hidden for so long, right under my nose. It's strange how one conversation can flip your life inside out, and suddenly you're questioning every memory you ever had with the people who raised you. Would you have confronted your family the way I did, or just kept pretending nothing was wrong? Sometimes I wonder if digging up the truth was worth what it cost, or if silence would have been easier in the end. Have you ever found out something about your parents that made you see them in a different light? Or caught someone close to you in a lie that changed how you looked at everything? I'm still not sure if I chose the right path, but at least I know where I stand now. Let me know what you think, even if you would have handled it completely differently. I read every comment. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribing and liking helps me know these confessions matter. And if this story reminds you of someone who needs to hear it, feel free to share. What would you have done if you were in my place?